Welcome to Falcons Drip, your go-to source for Falcons news and draft coverage. I'm Thon, founder and voice of Falcons Drip. Welcome back, everybody, to Falcons Drip Radio. As always, join my co-host Kyle, and what a game last night. You guys will probably be listening to this Monday morning, but we're recording this Saturday, the day after watching the Atlanta Falcons smack around the Miami Dolphins.
It's crazy how great the Falcons were this game. They had 3 interceptions, including one early on in the red zone by DeMarcco Hellams. It was tipped up. He was able to catch it in the end zone, run out to about the 10-yard line, and then you had another one by Lucas Dennis. It was a deep ball. It was basically an arm punt by Dolphins quarterback Skylar Thompson, the former Kansas State and West Virginia product. And then at the end of the game, to seal it and to close it out, you had Breon Borders get an interception at about the 15 of the Dolphins, and he ran it in for a pick 6. So that was awesome to see. Plus 5 sacks, including a strip sack by AK where he recovered recovered the fumble.
Yeah, it was a fun game to be part of. And a couple of things, right? It's important to look at it and be excited. Be excited. This is awesome. But at the end of the day, you have to remember and temper your expectations. Do I expect every single week the Falcons to go out 5 sacks, 3 picks, 2 forced fumbles? I would love to say I do. I'm not there yet. It was awesome, and it was great signs to see and good things for some of our guys. It is important too to remember, and both teams did this, but we had a couple of players who we expect to be getting big time reps for us during the season, playing big chunks of those games. So that being AK, Flowers, especially if Akuta's hurt, and Dee Alford. Let's start with AK. So I was wondering why he was playing so much, because it's typically not a good sign. As far as getting playing time to be in the fourth quarter of the first preseason game and be getting a lot of reps like AK was. So 2 things. First of all, AK did what he was supposed to do against second and third stringers. You can't, I don't want to look into it too much. Him getting a strip sack for a couple pressures. That's what he was. That's if he wants to be great, that's what he's supposed to do. Will it translate over? We'll have to see. But the reason why he played there so much is because he really hasn't been asked to cover. So he's kind of playing a new role. So they had him play because he needs as many reps as he can at this outside linebacker position.
Yeah, which I love the idea of getting him worked into his new role. And I also love how they had Zach Harris playing a lot. He played well wearing 96. I saw him get a TFL for one of the ball carriers for a loss of 2 or 3. He looked pretty good out there. He wasn't noticed readily all game. Another guy is Albert Hudgens, a guy who you saw just moving around the field the entire game. I think he was by far one of the most noticeable defensive linemen on the field for the game. He combined for a sack with Mike Jones of the linebacking core. And he was just noticeable out there. He seemed to always be near the ball.
And I'd say Timmy Horn, too, is another interior defensive lineman who looked really good. Maybe didn't
100%.
Maybe didn't flash as much as Huggins did, but if you know what you're looking for and you're looking for it, he did really well also. This is going to be a very, very hard team to make. It kind of feels like Huggins and Horn might be battling for the last spot on the depth chart as far as an interior lineman goes, right? I mean, you got Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, Taquan Graham, and Zach Harrison are kind of locks. So that's 5 guys right there. I don't think you took, and for playing 3 positions, I don't think you're going to typically keep more than 6. So it feels like Huggins and Horn are battling for this last spot that maybe we won't even keep. I think we will, especially because Campbell and Harrison are going to kind of play some edge too. But it's those are the two guys in the lead for the D line 6 spot. Um,
And I think Hudgens might have pushed himself in front of Horn just by a slight margin, but those two are really good players. Horn's made the roster the past couple of years, kind of as the last guy on the roster. And now you got Hudgens coming in here saying, wait up, it's not Horn's job. He's got to compete with me for it. So I really love him just flashing to add more competition because you can never have enough of it.
Yeah. And so this will be Huggins' third season, and Timmy Horn, he was a rookie, a UDFA last year. So it'll be really awesome just to see, because one of these guys could potentially end up on the practice squad, but I would not be shocked to see one of them get picked up to an active roster somewhere else.
100%. Those two showed they were good enough to be on at least some NFL roster, as a backup of some sort.
And I know we're jumping around a little bit. One thing I know we have to talk about, and so I'm just going to say it now because sometimes we forget to say things, but like it's awesome to see guys like Desmond Ritter and Matthew Bergeron not playing, because that just shows like that they're solidifying themselves. And for Bergeron, he solidified himself as the left guard. I would say he's right. It would be tough for him. We said this last, either last episode or 2 episodes ago. It's his position to lose at this point. And then going back to Ritter, like some people are going to be upset. Oh, you know, he should be playing. He should be getting reps. He's going to come out slow. Miami didn't play any of their starters, and we weren't playing most of ours. So to have our starting quarterback go out there playing with a bunch of backups against a bunch of backups, like that's not going to accomplish anything except possibly get him hurt. So don't look into it too much. He's supposed to play next game. Just enjoy this win and enjoy Logan Woodside. Just absolutely, he looked very serviceable out there. So I
Yeah.
was absolutely tearing it up, but I wouldn't say he tore it up, but he did really well.
He didn't look crazy, but he made a couple nice throws. I remember there was one into this crazy tight window. There was one defender, I can't remember the receiver who caught it, but there was one defender right on the backside of this receiver. It was probably a 10-yard completion, and there's one coming maybe a couple yards away, and he threaded the needle right into the position where the receiver could catch it, and only the receiver. A perfect ball from him, and it shows he's got enough accuracy to be an NFL quarterback. It's just whether the Falcons are like, he's good enough to stay on this roster as a third quarterback.
So as we're talking, Evan Birchfield from Falcoholic just posted the top 5 grades for offense and defense from the game last week. Would you like me to, I'll go through them quickly and we can talk about it a little bit. So let's go through the offense. Number 5, Godwin Igabuke. He was at a 78.2. Logan Woodside was at 4, speak of the devil, with an 82.7. Clint Ratkovich, the backup fullback, who we talked a little bit about before, was at 83.6. Scotty Miller was at 2 with an 85.3. And number 1 was our guy, Xavier Malone, with a 91.0.
Xavier Malone will also mention this. He had a catch where it was probably like 10 yards downfield, then he ran it down for 27 yards, 27-yard gain. So he had a nice big play, but that was his only big play of the game. But
Well,
he showed he's a guy who's like a big play specialist and is definitely in the running for that fifth job, fifth
so
wide receiver spot.
he had 2 catches for 50 yards, and the other catch he had was like he caught it and got hit like right after. Like it was a really nice play.
Oh yeah, that catch was late. I completely forgot about that one.
It's like it gets with everything going on and people coming in and out, you get tossed.
Yeah,
I,
I
I
was completely busy with edits and making stuff for the final that I completely missed that.
my stream kept freezing, but so I would say Xavier Malone right now. I wouldn't like guarantee, because he played so much in the into the fourth. I wouldn't guarantee he's a lock for the roster, but I'd say he's a lock for the practice squad at least.
Absolutely. If he's not a lock for the practice squad, I don't know what the Falcons are doing. Because that's absolute mismanagement if he doesn't if he ends up getting cut and he doesn't even make the practice squad, that's mismanagement unless some other team signs him to the active roster.
And I think Scotty Miller, our wide receiver three, like he's supposed to look like that against the twos and threes. Like that's what,
Mhm.
but it's encouraging because he's our wide receiver three, but that's what we want him to be doing and against that
Yeah,
type.
100%.
So awesome from him. I mentioned Clint Rakovich, backup fullback. I would be shocked if he's not on the practice squad. I hate it because I love Keith Smith, but we could see Keith Smith's time in Atlanta coming to an end. Rakovich was the number fullback 2 years ago, and then tore his ACL in camp with the Packers, and we scooped him up after the season last year. So
Mhm.
he's a good football player. So we'll see what happens. We talked about Logan Woodside a little bit, and then got on Ikabuke. Let's just talk about the running backs just in general.
He did have a touchdown in this game, a 10-yard touchdown rush. It was the first score of the game, made it 6-0 right before the end of the first half. I believe there's 15 seconds to go.
Hmm.
And
He
there's
had
a great picture. We put it in our final score update
yep,
where he's got his hands up from that touchdown. But Koo unfortunately missed the extra point after that. So he had a great game, looked solid.
13
He
carries for
did
70
everything
yards.
he needed to do to possibly be a fourth running back if they wanted to keep him.
Yeah, 13 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. Carlos Washington is a different type of running back. He had some splash plays, and it kind of didn't have he doesn't have the same burst that Goodwin has. But Carlos, he had 12 carries for 27 yards. So when you're looking at it like that, it looks a lot worse. But I would
Mm,
say he had a lot more tough runs than Goodwin had.
yeah,
So just
100%.
two different styles, and I would say we probably I would bank on Goodwin being the fourth guy if we keep four running backs.
Yeah, and I think for me when I first started looking at this roster, I was looking at Carlos Washington as the fourth running back. And with Goodwin's performance, I think it leads me to believe that he's the fourth running back because that special teams versatility, um, and plus just the running ability that I didn't know he had.
Mm-hmm. Um, so let's just talk. We talked about Xavier Malone. He looked great. Um, let's also mention, Darby got hurt. I think he said it was a soft. I think Coach Smith said it was a soft tissue thing. So hopefully he's back and healthy. And then Josh Ali had a great catch and then noodle armed another one. So
Okay, so let's talk about the bad drop he had. Okay, so here's the route. So Logan Woodside, he's got him on a streak down the field. It's a double move. He gets the cornerback with a great move. So he's got the
mhm.
cornerback like 2 yards behind him at this point. Logan Woodside throws a perfect ball. It hits him in the hands, uh, right where you don't want to put it, right at the hands. I'm joking, of course, but it hits him in the hands and he drops it. So that looked really bad, but other than that, his route was perfect.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was some great things there, but all
I
he
would,
did was not finish it. He needs to finish that catch. As a wide receiver, you need to make that play if
and
you're going to make this roster.
with how tight the wide receiver five battle is, that literally could be the difference.
100%. That's a big drop, and if you can't make consistently make that play, you're not making this roster.
Mhm. And we did see, and let's go back to, we haven't talked about this, but again, we're all over the place. Special teams is important, right? So we got to pay attention to that. And Frank Darby played a lot of special teams early on with the first special teams group. So that would indicate to me and probably a lot of other people that Darby's in the lead for that wide receiver five spot. Like a lot of these players and what you're looking for is you want to look at the special teams during this part of the year because that's going to tell you who's in the lead for like these backup positions, right? So an example, I was just telling Kyle right before we started recording, pay attention to the personal protector. because if you watch, our personal protector was Abernathy, the safety. So that would indicate to me that he would be the fourth string guy right now. With Hellams playing a heck of a game, he was all over the place with a pick, and we didn't even talk about all the tackles he made. Like he just felt he was, and big hits too. So
Hmm.
if we don't see him getting a lot of reps at personal protector, to me that would indicate that he is still safety five and Abernathy is safety four. So we'll look for
Yeah.
that. That's something that I want you want to look for as the next two games happen, because we want to be seeing Helms getting a lot more special teams reps. Oh,
Yeah,
he did.
and speaking of special teams, we haven't even mentioned one of the biggest special teams plays made in the game, and that was made by our projected starting nickel cornerback, in Dee Alford, who had a 79-yard punt return late in the game to make it 13-3.
That's my guy.
So what a play by him.
Yeah, he
Just a
really.
guy who continues to improve his value to this team and show why he's definitely going to be a big part of this roster.
And I would say I'll say it again, like that's what you want to see. Like he is, which is unfortunate for unfortunate for Goodwin. But if Dee Alford can be our punt return guy, like Goodwin's Goodwin's ability to be a returner and a fourth running back, that really hurts him. This is a good.
Mhm.
I keep saying this is going to be a very hard roster to make, especially at defensive back.
100%. There's guys all over the place. Tight end position is stacked. You saw Fisk make a nice catch.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was very contested. It was only for a couple yards, but it was a nice catch for a guy who's typically only a blocking tight end. So it was nice to see. And even if he might be a practice squad guy, we'll see. But honestly, it's nice to see all these young guys doing well, and it's nice to see the scheme working, even if it's versus just backups with your second stringers in.
So let me give the top five PFF graded guys from yesterday defensively. Number five was D. Alford with 75.4. Again, that's what you
That
want to
makes
see.
sense.
Yep. Number four was defensive tackle Carlos Davis with a 75.6, which I did not even bring him up at all. He did have a couple plays, but and that's part of this, right? Is like there are so many things that you don't see, not you, anyone that we don't see because you can't, it's almost impossible from the unless you're looking at the all 22 view or looking behind them, it's very hard to just see everything. So awesome for him.
Mm,
Maybe as a special push for the not special teams, 16-man practice squad. Trey Flowers was the third with a 78.5. It's what you want to see.
makes sense. Makes sense.
Breon Borders was second with an 84.6, and we didn't talk enough
He
about
had a
him.
great game.
Great.
He had a couple great pass deflections. He had obviously that pick six we talked about earlier late in the game to seal the game completely. So honestly nice to see him do this. It's totally nice to see a guy who's we were thinking, oh, has no shot at making the roster. And now he's looking like a guy who could be a quality backup
And
on
and I'll
some
say
NFL
this,
teams.
he needs to, because he's actually suspended for the first two games, um, and that hurts him a lot, because if Jeff Okuda doesn't play, we're also Borders can't play either. So if he is that fringe guy, there's a very good chance that they go to somebody else, because we won't have him for the first two games, right? So
Mhm.
that hurts him a lot. Um, he played awesome though. He was great, and I really hope he seems like a great guy too. When you hear him on the mic, during the interviews at the end. But you know, when you have Natrone Brooks and Lucas Dennis also making plays out there, it's going to be tough. Again, it's going to be really hard, no matter how well you play. If you're unavailable for the first two games, it's no bueno.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll also mention, and you mentioned Trone Books had a couple plays. He did have a sack.
Hmm.
He had a sack for, I think it was a 7-yard loss. And then you also had 6'5" safety, Clifford Chapman with a sack.
Hmm.
So these DBs were getting in, getting pressure. So I love what Ryan Nielsen was doing. He was bringing DBs, he was scheming up pressure. It was basically, it showed you his scheme works. It's just all about can they put it together in the regular season once they get there with all their starters, all their main guys in.
Let's
So this just gave me more confidence that Nielsen is the right guy.
let's let's talk about how Darren Hall didn't get a lot of looks until late in the game. That's not good for him.
Hmm.
Like to be getting reps behind Natrone Brooks, behind Breon Borders, right behind Dee Alford. It's not good. Like it feels like he's on the outside looking in.
I don't think he makes this roster.
Mm-mm.
I'll say I don't even know if he makes this practice squad.
Yeah,
I
I don't
just think there's
either.
way too much depth for him to make even the practice squad on this team.
And he'll get picked.
Maybe there's a chance if a couple guys get snatched up, that he
Yeah.
makes the practice squad, but right now it doesn't look like it with all this depth at DB, especially.
And I think he'll get picked up somewhere. I don't know where, but I think he will. And then we didn't even I'm gonna see, yeah, we're jumping all over the place. Before we keep going, the number one graded player from defense yesterday was Albert Huggins with an 84.7. So
Yeah, he looked like the best player, especially on the defensive line. If you
mhm.
wanted to go DBs, you could say a bunch of different guys. You could go, oh, it was Breon Borders. Oh, it was DeMarcco Hellams. There's a couple
Mhm.
guys you could make a case for. Natrone Brooks was great. Clifford Chapman had some great plays. But defensive line, I think he was the best by far.
He was good for sure. Um, so a couple of other notable players that they listed here. Jalen Mayfield had a 77.4, which is a high score. Ryan Newsel, the center, and Jalen Mayfield strictly played right tackle. Which, by the way,
Yeah,
like let's let's talk about that a little bit. Like he got absolutely crucified
at
for
guard.
at guard, and people were just horrible to him and said how he's a bust and he'll never make it and this and the other thing. And I've talked about it, it's like going from right tackle to guard is already different, and then going
Yeah.
from the right side to the left side, it's like wiping with the other hand. So, and
If
then
he's able to make it at tackle, he'll have some of the shortest arms of any tackle.
I
But it
think
is his main position he played in college, so it wouldn't be surprising for him to be like, okay, I'm more comfortable here because he's got let's say a bunch of at least 3+ years at Michigan of reps starting there and getting reps in practice.
he's if right now the season were to start, I think he'd be our swing tackle,
And that's
even though
not
he'd only play
something I would have thought
right side.
earlier.
I guess he can't be our swing tackle though because he only plays on the right side. So I don't know. This is gonna be really interesting. They
Yeah,
might have to.
maybe if we keep like 9, he'll be the ninth guy,
Yeah,
the
I don't
last guy
know.
in.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Anyways, center Ryan Newsel was 70.9. I think a lot of people expected Gwen to be the backup center, and I think Newsel's easily holding him off. Newsel played, started there, played really well for the first 2 quarters, I think, until Gwen came in, and Gwen looked a little shaky at times. Um, Penny Hart was a 64.4. DeMarcco Helms was 68.3. Nate Landman, who, and we can talk a little bit about this, who I said earlier seems like locked in as the linebacker for, but maybe he's pushing for the linebacker three because the next person listed is Michael Walker with a 31.2, which is
Oh.
not good. Let's talk about Nate Landman first. He looked really good. I when he was on the field, he was in on all, he made tons of plays. He had a sack. He had a lot of really nice run fits. So I like Nate Landman a lot.
Yeah, he did have a sack pretty early. I believe it was the first sack of the game. I believe it was first drive. I think it was. Um, he did make a couple plays. He didn't look terrible. Um, well, I'll also mention Tay Davis had a couple plays, although he did have a couple mistakes. So they both weren't perfect, but out of a
Mike,
backup inside backer, what you're looking for is a guy who can just rotate in and maybe for a couple plays be solid, and
mhm.
not be superstar level, but be playable.
And also too, Tay Davis looked explosive and also um I don't know how to say this a little nicer, but also looked lost at times. Not Tay Davis, I'm sorry. Mike Jones. All Tay Davis also looked like that. Mike Jones looked even better than Tay Davis, I thought, when he was blitzing, but also looked a little lost when he wasn't.
I can agree with that.
I think he's a practice squad guy.
Yeah, Mike Jones and Tay Davis might be practice squad guys. They're
I
both
don't
solid players.
I think like the sky's the limit for Mike Jones. Like if he can figure his stuff out, but we'll just have to see.
He definitely has enough size and I think enough speed to play in the league. He's not like overly explosive, but he can get it done. He just might have to be more of that blitz heavy linebacker. And I
So,
think that's the role he fits better because he definitely looked good coming down and blitzing.
and he was, he came out, so he transferred from Clemson, I believe, to LSU, and he's at Clemson. Like everyone was talking about him like he was the next great linebacker.
Hmm.
Went to Clemson and just never really panned out. And then same thing when he was having his pre-draft workouts, like people were expecting these crazy numbers and they never saw it. He just looked pretty average to below average athletically, but it to see him out on the field, like he looked good.
Yeah, and I know when we were talking about on off season, we saw those athletic numbers and we were like, wow, this guy might not even be close to making the roster. I don't know why the Falcons pulled the trigger and signed him as an undrafted free agent. But
Yeah,
sure enough, he looks like he could be a quality practice squad guy at worst.
yeah, yeah. It's gonna be fun, and I think we're gonna give you guys an episode coming up here where we talk about like what our projected 53 man roster and our projected practice squad, and we'll kind of go over that with you guys. Um, Anything else before we talk about kind of our MVP that you would give for this game? Anything else you feel like?
Um, the only thing I'll say is Falcons defense seemed to look better in the second half and when Mike White came out, which is understandable because Mike White has started some games in the NFL with the Jets. And has been a decent starter at times, so that's understandable that they did a little better versus the guys like Skylar Thompson.
And I would say also too, just speaking about the defense, because the defense looked great, looked well coached, looked like we never had depth like this as long as I can remember. Um, and I would say that they all say the right things, they all do the right things, they all act appropriately. They're really bringing in a great culture. And you talked about um, Coach Nielsen before, like he's excited. Everybody this offseason was like, oh, give us this coach, give us that coach. And people are talking about Nielsen as being one of the guys. And I couldn't think of one person that was like, yeah, like that's the guy I want. He was the guy we needed, not the
Mhm.
guy we deserved.
Yeah. I think before we leave, we got to mention how about Nielsen's stash? That is one great stash. Him
Better
and
than Coach Smith.
him and Coach Smith are rocking some nice stashes. So
Mhm.
I know they're definitely part of the all stashers team for sure.
Oh man, I definitely can't grow a mustache like that.
Um,
All right.
with that, you want to get into your defensive MVP and offensive MVP, and we'll get into overall MVP.
So
Uh,
I'm gonna say, are they the same guys, like the overall MVP versus the
let, our defensive is probably gonna be the same as overall, so let's just do
yeah,
overall
okay,
me and our defensive guy.
let's just do defense. Let's just do defense. an
Let's just
offense.
do offensive and overall.
Okay.
If that's gonna be our defensive guy.
Um, so I would say, um, so offensively when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about like who kind of flashed and stood out to me. Um, Obviously you want to go with Goodwin because he scored the touchdown and he looked really well. It looked really good out there. But I'm gonna go with Malone. I'm gonna go with Xavier Malone. I think he looked explosive. He didn't look like he's 5'7". I think he really made a name for himself out there as a guy who deserves to be in the league, a D2 player with ridiculous stats. And I'm sure a lot of people said, "Oh, he's a D2 guy," but he looked great. He could really be the speed receiver to open up this offense. So maybe if not this year, maybe down the line.
I definitely think Goodwin's deserving, but I don't want to go the obvious route, the guy who had 13 carries, 70 yards, and had the great stats. I want to go with someone who definitely improved, and that's Logan Woodside.
Hmm.
He's a guy who definitely showed that he could be a guy who makes this roster as the third quarterback.
Hmm.
As he knows the system, he knows how to make all the plays, all the short plays, and all the short and intermediate passes. Maybe he's not so great on the deep balls and needs to improve that a little bit, but he showed that he can be a quality game manager. As time and time again, we saw a couple times where he switched out of plays, changed the play when he didn't like what he saw. So, excellent to see from him, and I'm so excited to see where he ends up, whether it's a practice squad guy or whether he ends up on the back end.
And I think because of the new rule change where you can have an extra player, but he has to be dressed, but he has to be a quarterback, I think it almost gives him a lock at this point as the quarterback three. Also
Mhm.
because if like let's say Ritter goes down or something, Heineke, and I love Heineke's so much fun to watch, but he is not risk adverse, right? Like he's the kind of guy, like I call him Fitzpatrick without a beard because he's going to go out there and just sling the ball. And he's the kind of guy that you could end up with 5 interceptions and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
So to,
he's definitely a gambler.
yeah. So to
He's
have a
willing to take risk.
guy like Logan Woodside to potentially be like another guy that could step in if you needed him to, who's not going to be taking as many risks. He's going to take what's kind of given. It'll just be just a nice, um,
Different type of quarterback. So you
yeah,
got one who might make all the flashy plays, and you're one that's gonna just make the plays that are there.
exactly. So I do like him as a third string, and you know, typically with your backup quarterbacks, you're either looking for guys that can contribute somehow. Um, and it's usually a risky rookie who hasn't really done anything but shows all the potential, or a guy like Logan Woodside who's just gonna get it if he gets in, he's just gonna chip away.
Mhm.
Uh,
For sure. With that, you want to go on to defensive slash overall
yeah,
rookie, player of the game?
yeah. So you could give it to so many people. I want to give it to Alford because he had some nice plays in the beginning, and his punt return really was like a game-changing touchdown. It really like it felt like that was what started the snowball. But I'm not going to give it to him or Flowers or AK because I feel like those are starter type players playing against second and third string. So I have to give it to DeMarcco Helms. I just think he was all over the field. He was making big hits. He was playing on special teams. He had that interception, took points off the board for the other team. But there's so many different ways you could go and for them defensively. So, but Helms is it for me.
Yeah, I love the pick there. There's certainly a bunch of guys you could go with, and I came into the podcast thinking I was gonna go with a DB like a Borders, Alford, a Hellams type, but I'm actually gonna go and change it up a little bit, and I'm gonna go with Hudgens.
Hmm.
By far the best defensive lineman in this game. And played great. He had a bunch of good run stops, a nice sack. So I think he is deserving of being the defensive MVP for this game. Give some love to the big boys.
There you go.
Editor Kyle here. I'm coming on to break some news. So right after we recorded the show later that night, maybe like 8 hours later after we recorded, we got the news that USFL Defensive Player of the Year, linebacker Frank Gedna signed with the Falcons. He was the Defensive Player of the Year, playing for the Michigan Panthers in the United States Football League, where he recorded 104 tackles, three interceptions, and a sack. And he is 26 years old, and comes in to replace Michael Walker. Michael Walker was, of course, waived after posting a 31 grade PFF score for week one. We were talking about his horrible PFF grade earlier in the pod, and he got waived. I was talking about it earlier in the day before I decided to record this segment where we talk about some of the things going on with the Falcons, and he was released, which shocked me with how quickly it happened. I didn't expect it to happen this quickly. I thought they'd give him another shot, Michael Walker, but apparently they didn't. And this leads me to think it leaves Frank Gedna in a very good spot to make this roster, with him being an inside backer with incredible highlight film where he expresses good instincts, great hands, the ability to do a bit of everything. He's got a little bit of pass rushing ability, good pass coverage skills. So great instincts overall from what I've seen. I still got to watch more of him and get myself better suited on who he is. But overall, I really love this move for the Falcons. And I also saw people talking about when we posted on Instagram about it, about his move. You can follow Thon at falconsdrip.drip on Instagram. You can follow me at Georgia Sports Content on Instagram. So if you want to follow us to get instant updates of what's going on in the world of Falcons, please feel free to do it. But overall, great moves for the Falcons, trying to get better. And right now, it feels like Falcons take 4 inside linebackers. And my projection includes Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, Nate Landman, and Frank Gedna as of this moment. I'm absolutely loving the move. I'm ecstatic about it, and I'm super excited. And also, we didn't mention Ade, who a bunch of people were curious about, and I saw people talking about it in the comments of the Frank Gedna post. So I wanted to mention him, and I'll mention he played a ton in the game, and he didn't really flash at all. So my prediction is, at best, he's a practice squad player. At worst, it's his last moment on this team, just like Micah Walker. And with that, news about Frank Gedna and Micah Walker news, first reported by Tom Pelissero, we'll get you back to ending the show. And we want to thank you for listening, and we hope you'll continue to listen to Falcon Strip Radio. And I'll send it over to Thon for this one.
All right. So with that, guys, we just kind of went over, and no, it was really kind of random how we talked about this game. I went into it thinking, okay, we're going to talk about this and this and this, but really we were just all over the place. And it feels right. This is a good game with a lot of good stuff happening. I will say just very briefly, like the only real bad thing that I can think of off the top of my head is Koo missed 2 extra points. He really hasn't been kicking a lot. So don't look into it too much. If we go the next 2 games and that's still happening, then it's time to panic. Don't panic now.
Yeah, I'm not panicked yet, but that's not a good thing.
Don't push the panic button, but you can hover around it if you want.
And also don't push the Super Bowl button because we were just playing backups.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like I said, like awesome. This is what you want. Like everything you want to see. Well, everything we saw is what you want to see, but doesn't guarantee anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. So with that, like I said, we just went over a bunch of stuff happening in the preseason game. And we're gonna next episode we're gonna go over Atlanta versus Cincinnati. So guys, Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the win and rise up.
Rise up.
Again, this is Thon Ray. You guys can follow us at Falcons_drip on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please make sure you subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do to get the alert for our next episode. If you guys enjoyed today, please leave us a review. It always helps us grow. Until then, see you next time. Rise up.